So let's begin. So this is my blackboard, and on my blackboard, I got this blackboard made to be a square, and I had it made so that it looks like a TV screen or like a TV monitor. And the reason, so you see this is like a TV screen here. And so the thing is that with digital painting and drawing and stuff like that, you often are working on a screen. And I wanted a sort of analog screen. And whiteboards are kind of like a, I wanted to, yeah, so whiteboards are kind of like an analog screen. But the thing about whiteboards is that you can't do something like this in a whiteboard, right? Like dry erase markers don't do that. And you can't sort of like fade and do these kinds of interesting things. So I got this board so I could practice drawing big and make big drawings, but basically try to sort of retain some of the digital aspects of the screen that I enjoyed. Another thing that I like about the screen and about the chalkboard here is that if you make a bunch of marks, like something like that, oops. Well, for one thing, you can also not break dry erase markers, and so you can't like sort of come up with your own little tools for them. But if you make something like this and then you draw over it, if you look closely, you're not actually drawing on top of the chalk that's there. You're sort of cutting through the chalk. And that's something that's sort of interesting to me. Like you can't really draw over or layer chalk. You sort of like cut through the chalk. And so in a way, you're just sort of like replacing what's on the surface. You know, you're sort of like pushing other stuff aside. There's only so much chalk can sit on the surface. And so the interesting thing to me about this is like the way that pixels work on a screen is you can't really put pixels on top of other pixels. You can only replace the pixels that are already there. And so even if you're drawing with pencil on paper, you don't really get this effect, you know? And the other thing that I like about the Blackboard is it's really easy to erase and stuff like that, just like it's easy to erase or uncover stuff on the screen. So let's finish this drawing. Making this little guy here. We'll do a border. Sometimes I start with a border. Like this. See how that works. And then you can go like that. Try to get messy. Actually, you know what I like to do? I like to do one of my new games. Because this is the kind of old way that I was drawing, but lately I've been coming up with these games, and that might be a better way to, I'll keep the border, that might be a better way to move forward. So lately I've been coming up with these games where you sort of have a system, right? For example, this is a little function or program called the Julia bead. That's the Julia bead. And now we're going to use the Julia bead in a series of drawings. So we'll do one drawing and then maybe two drawings. So the way this works is you sort of have to draw a shape that's similar to this or construct it in a way that's similar to this. So we'll do something like this to begin. Like that. And then we'll continue with something maybe like this. So here's another Julia bead. So 1, 2, and then we'll maybe go like that. And that. Oh, I'm going to do a little robot, I guess. Okay. So there's this little robot guy. Maybe he needs some arms, but they could be coming off here. Now, so far, we are just each time drawing a pretty consistent form that looks like this, but at different scales. Maybe the lines are different lengths. Maybe this is a different size, but basically the lines are always in the middle or something like that. Now, we can get a little bit more improvisational with that. So I could maybe say that a Julia bead could also be something like this, where the line is sort of curved. Right, so it sort of undergoes a kind of transformation, right? Now, another thing that I could do is I could say maybe these lines don't have to go on either side. Maybe they could go in different directions. So I could also maybe do a Julia bead that looks like that, right? Maybe they don't have to be in the center. So we'll do another one here, another similar one. So we're starting to sort of improvise or bend the rules of the Julia bead. Maybe I have something that's like this, but then maybe they can overlap. So that's like two lines coming off the Julia bead, as if maybe you have like a bead on a string and the string is sort of overlapping, right? So we'll try to keep the symmetry here. Like that. Now we have this sort of angry face looking thing. And maybe we do some kind of recursive thing where, you know, because I've sort of invented this form, right, it's actually going to be really easy for me to clone or copy this form again. So if I want to do a smaller version of this drawing up here, it's a lot easier for me to sort of go through all of the steps once more and just repeat this drawing, but maybe at a different scale. So let's do that. So we're over here. We have our main Julia bead there. We have the head there. This little guy here. And now I'm drawing it a little bit more freely. And that's because I've sort of invented this thing. And because I've sort of invented this thing, I can draw it in a more free style. And things can start to break down a little bit. And what happens is, the interesting thing about this game is that eventually you sort of lose the structure, right? So this is like sort of still retains the structure. This sort of like you start to lose the structure. And if we go up top here, we can start to say, let's do one more where we're like that, and then, you know, you can be more sketchy or something. Like that. Right? So essentially we're now using it as a kind of compositional tool. Right? So here you have like the original drawing, the second drawing, and then like the simplification of the drawing, right? So we're going from a place where we're using a Julia bead and you can discern where every bead is, and then you're like, maybe you can't, or it's like starting to get a little more confusing, and this is like the basic form. In other words, we're maybe starting to create a new kind of symbol here, right? So if we're no longer using the Julia bead, now we might be using this kind of symbol. So let me just erase a little bit these drawings, and we'll now work off this symbol or try to figure out what is it that we actually made with the Julia bead. How can we turn that into like a function that we can sort of repeat? So let's erase this here. So what is this thing? I think it's basically a Y with a line, with a circle, with another Y, with like circle with a square inside. That's a good simplification, right? I would say. It doesn't contain everything, but that might be our new sort of primitive form, right? So we can call this the Y bead. We'll call it the YJ bead, or the Y Julia bead, because it's some new kind of bead with the Y's at the end. All right, now let's do a small drawing of the Y Julia bead. And I think we have 6 minutes left. Yeah, so this will be the last thing that we do. So the Y Julia bead, how do we begin? You know, we sort of could start with the circle, I think. Then we have the Y lines. Then we have to do something in the middle, but maybe this could go like that. And then this might be sort of like that. And now we're building a kind of form or something. So maybe we do this next circle here. This one might be more upside down. So we have a square there. Circle there, the Y's, and then one more. So we'll do Y, up, circle, over, circle, square. So there's our little character. And maybe we want to do some grounding for him. So we'll do Y, over, circle, Y, over, circle, Y, over, circle, Y, over, circle, Y. And there we have our nice little picture created out of the YJ bead, this little character that's hanging out. And let's bring back the Julia bead, the J bead, and maybe now let's use the Julia bead again, just to do some hair. I'll bring in another favorite of mine, the X. X marks the spot, and we'll add a couple more things in here. Like we'll do an X here, an X here. And this isn't the only way that I draw. This is sort of a way of drawing that's sort of more process-based, like sort of more symbol-based or compositional. But I also draw in other ways. Often I use my Blackboard to make really pretty drawings where I don't really work off of these kinds of symbols and things. But that's the way this is going to go today. Okay, so now let's give it a little signature here. Let's maybe design it down here. We'll just say JAS 18, and I believe it is the 4th, right? 5th. Is it 5th? May 5th? April.
May 5th.
Yeah. May 3rd, actually. 5-3, and it's like, let's say it's 3:30 basically. There you go. So there's a picture. Not the most beautiful picture, but the information I would say is kind of pretty. So maybe I'll leave this on the board for now, and wait till I get back from you. Maybe I'll even decorate it a little bit, actually, when you keep looking at some things. We have 3 minutes left to beautify. And here I'm just going to do whatever I want. Things look a little bit too big. So when I first got this Blackboard, I was really trying to make really pretty drawings, and I can show you images of those drawings. I almost never use it for like planning things, although now that I have this game that I've come up with, I want to sort of make more casual drawings where I just come up with new symbols and stuff, because I really do want to use it like a computer system. And the way that I often use computer systems is in this sort of liminal way where I'm not making final things, or I'm often programming symbols or doing other kinds of things. So I want to find a balance between basically programming and making a picture, like programming pictures and drawing a picture. So I think the aesthetics of that in the end will probably be not so beautiful, but there could be some kind of balance between them. In the same way that if you kind of communicate some kind of information in a diagram, you can also make that diagram sort of attractive visually. This is sort of, you know, I'm trying to sort of create half painting and half sort of notational kind of image, half notation. All of those. Anyway, I like the Blackboard. I love to draw big, but the thing is, drawing big is not always so easy. You need like a big studio or something. And this just makes it so fun and simple to draw big. You know, it's basically like a form of like, you know, making drawings on a chalkboard. It's like you're drawing on basically a piece of rock with another piece of rock. In a way, it's like cave painting or something like that. And I don't know, I think of the chalkboard in a way is like the earliest form of new media to me. Like it has all these properties that new media have, that like digital media have, but it's like, and it's sort of abstracted, like it's a square and stuff like that. And it's meant to be sort of mutable, like new media is thought of as mutable. So in a way, it's sort of like the earliest form of new media. It's also like this educational thing built into it, where like if you write text on a chalkboard, it doesn't really feel out of place. So you could write like X, Y, Z, and like label something on a chalkboard, and it just sort of feels natural. Like, okay, like that's a label on a chalkboard. Whereas if you were like doing a painting on canvas and you were labeling something or adding some like info stuff that's like from informational kinds of imagery, then it feels sort of alien and unnatural, you know? But chalkboard is something that's nice because it accepts, and the whiteboard doesn't even do this. The whiteboard is supposed to be all about like to-do lists and stuff, but the chalkboard itself accepts like all different kinds of images, you know, and information from different fields in a really nice way, I think. You know, it's sort of culturally accepted, I guess. And that's the timer. Cool. And I think we will erase. So what was here, and now it's been recorded, and now what's here is gone. And often, when I'm done, usually when I'm done drawing, I put some water in on my little pen here.